Elias Rowan had practiced the greeting 50 times on the shuttle ride down, but the words still felt heavy in his mouth. The Virelian Empire did not invite outsiders often, and when it did, it was never for something small. The planet below looked like a polished gemstone set into dark space. Its atmosphere shimmered with pale blue light, and the cities beneath were arranged in careful patterns, like someone had drawn them with a ruler. The shuttle glided toward the capital, and Elias pressed his hands flat on his knees so they would stop moving. He was a diplomat, trained to speak calmly in front of presidents, CEOs, and angry crowds. Still, this was different. The Virelians were older than humanity's recorded history. Their language carried layers of meaning that translators could only guess at. Their court was famous for silence that felt louder than noise. A soft chime sounded, and the shuttle's AI spoke in a neutral voice. "Arrival in 6 minutes. Please confirm attire and presentation objects." Elias looked down at himself. The suit was Earth-standard formal, dark and clean, with a small pin of the Terran Union on his lapel. In a velvet case on his side sat a gift approved by 3 committees, a simple glass sphere that held a tiny moving model of Earth's oceans. It was meant to show beauty without bragging. Elias had joked to his team that it was the least threatening planet in a ball. Nobody laughed. He swallowed and nodded. "Confirmed." The shuttle passed over long bridges of shining stone and gardens shaped into spirals. The capital did not sprawl. It fit itself into the land like a carefully solved puzzle. Elias could not see advertisements, crowds, or messy construction. Everything looked finished like it had always been there. When the shuttle landed, the door opened with a whisper. Warm air touched Elias' face, carrying a faint scent like rain on clean metal. 2 Virelian attendants waited outside. They were tall, slender, and wrapped in layered robes that looked woven from light. Their faces were smooth, with wide, dark eyes that reflected the sky. They did not smile, but their posture did not feel hostile either. It felt measured. "Envoy Rowan," the first attendant said, the translator in Elias' ear turning the sound into English. "You will follow the path of alignment. Please match your pace to ours." Elias nodded quickly. "Of course." They walked. Elias matched their long steps as best he could. The path beneath their feet was a pale stone that seemed to glow softly. Along the sides, tall pillars rose like frozen waves, each carved with symbols that the translator labeled only as unresolved meaning. That did not help. Elias' eyes kept flicking toward the pillars anyway, trying to read them like a student staring at a difficult exam. As they moved deeper, sound faded. The air itself seemed quieter, as if the building drank noise. Elias felt his breathing become too loud. He tried to make it smaller. They reached a set of doors as high as a building. No guard stood there. The doors opened on their own, folding back with perfect smoothness. Elias stepped into a hall so wide he could not judge the distance. Light poured down from a ceiling made of crystal panels. It was not harsh. It felt like being underwater, calm and bright at the same time. At the far end, a raised platform held the Virelian throne. It was not a chair in the human sense. It was a shaped structure that supported a standing posture, like it expected a ruler to stay awake and alert. Around it stood members of the court, arranged in arcs like a living pattern. Their robes were different shades, some deep violet, some silver, some a dark blue that reminded Elias of midnight. And in the center, perfectly still, stood Empress Surithka. Elias' first thought was that she did not look like a monster or a myth. She looked like a person in the way that mattered. She was tall and elegant, her robe falling in layers that shifted slightly as she moved. Her eyes were the deepest black he had ever seen, not empty, but full of something quiet and powerful. Her head was crowned with a thin band of crystal, and when she turned her face toward Elias, the entire room seemed to focus. The attendant stopped at a marked line in the stone floor. Elias stopped too. He placed the gift case carefully on a small pedestal that waited for it. A Virelian servant moved forward, lifted the case, and carried it away without any sign of curiosity. Elias' throat tightened. He reminded himself of the protocol. 3 steps forward, pause, bow at the right angle, speak the greeting with the correct timing. He took the steps. The hall felt even bigger when he was walking alone toward the Empress. The eyes of the court were on him, unblinking, calm, and very hard to read. He bowed, careful not to bend too far. "Empress Surithka," he said, and the translator repeated it in the Virelian sound patterns. "I am Elias Rowan, envoy of the Terran Union." I come with respect and gratitude for your invitation. The Empress watched him for a long moment. The silence stretched until Elias started to worry he had said something wrong. Then her voice came, smooth and clear, and it felt like it carried through the room without effort. Envoy Elias Rowan, your presence has been observed, your words have been recorded. She tilted her head slightly. You may speak your purpose. Elias felt his mouth go dry. Purpose, that was the hard part. His mission was simple on paper. Open a cultural exchange route, secure a safe passage agreement for Terran ships, and establish a long-term channel of communication. But in front of this ancient court, those goals felt small and easy to crush. He began with the first prepared line. The Terran Union wishes to learn from the Viorlian Empire and to build peaceful cooperation between our peoples. We believe mutual understanding can reduce fear and increase progress for both. A tiny shift happened in the court. Not movement exactly, but attention narrowing like a lens. Elias paused, confused. Had he used the wrong phrase? The translator in his ear did not warn him. He continued carefully. We also offer our own knowledge. Humanity is young compared to your empire, but we are adaptable. We create quickly, we form connections easily. We hope that can be valuable. Again, that strange tightening of focus. Elias' heart started to beat faster. He tried to ignore it. Maybe this was normal. Maybe Viorlians simply listened hard. Empress Surithka stepped forward a half step. You claim to form connections easily. Her eyes held his. Define connection. Elias blinked. This was not in the script. Connection means trust, shared goals, communication, friendship. Friendship, the Empress repeated as if tasting the word. This concept has appeared in your transmissions. It is inconsistent. Elias forced a small smile. Humans are inconsistent sometimes. A pause. The Empress did not smile back, but she did not look offended either. Inconsistency is usually weakness. Elias' smile turned nervous. Sometimes, but sometimes it is also creativity. Something like a ripple passed through the court. Elias could not tell if it was approval or alarm. His palms felt damp inside his gloves. He focused on breathing. The Empress's gaze moved to the pedestal where the gift had been placed. You have brought an object. Yes, Elias said quickly. A small model of Earth's oceans. We wanted to share something beautiful from our home world. Beauty, she said. Another inconsistent concept. Elias chuckled before he could stop himself. It was a quiet sound, but in the huge hall it felt loud. His chuckle turned into a cough as he realized how alone it sounded. A few members of the court shifted their heads at the noise. Elias' cheeks warmed. Sorry, it's just humans often use words that have different meanings depending on context. The Empress studied him. Explain humor. Elias froze. Humor now. His training had prepared him for hard negotiation, cultural sensitivity, and emergency escape routes. Not a sudden philosophy test about jokes. He swallowed. Humor is a way humans handle tension and uncertainty. We say things that are not meant literally to make others feel relaxed. The Empress's eyes narrowed slightly, not angry, focused. You present literal meaning and then remove it. In a way, Elias admitted, but we do it with signals, tone, timing, shared understanding. The Empress took another small step forward. Your tone has shifted repeatedly since you entered. Elias' heart sank. Yes, I'm a little nervous. Nervousness suggests threat. Her voice remained calm. Do you see threat here? Elias shook his head quickly. No, not threat. It's just the importance. This is an honor. The Empress held still again. Honor, importance, nervousness, humor, connection. Her gaze remained on him like she was assembling pieces of a puzzle. Your species behaves as if the world is shaped by emotion. Elias hesitated. Emotion is part of it, yes. In our record, she said, emotion is unreliable. Elias felt the pressure of the court like weight on his shoulders. He wanted to do well. He wanted to say something that would represent humanity honestly without sounding foolish. But his mouth felt disconnected from his brain, as if his words might trip and fall. He took a breath. Emotion is unreliable sometimes, he said slowly, choosing simple words. But it also tells us what matters. It helps us care for each other. It helps us choose kindness even when it is not the easiest option. The Empress's head tilted again, a careful movement. Kindness as choice, not efficiency. Yes, Elias said, and the word came out softer than he intended. Sometimes we choose what is meaningful, not what is perfect. Silence settled again. Elias' hands twitched, and he forced them to stay still. He realized he had drifted from the prepared diplomatic purpose into something personal and strange. He tried to recover. "Our purpose is peaceful exchange," he said. "We want trade and learning, we want open communication, we want to avoid misunderstanding." The Empress did not respond immediately. Instead, she turned her gaze slightly toward her advisors. It was not a request for permission. It looked like a shared calculation. The court remained silent, but Elias felt a shift, like the room itself was running a test on him. Then the Empress faced him again. "Human envoy, you are permitted one question. Choose it carefully." Elias' stomach flipped. One question. His mind raced through options: safe passage agreement, cultural exchange rules, long-term treaty conditions. He could ask about borders, trade, scientific collaboration. One question could shape years of future talks. But his nerves were still buzzing, and the room's intense silence made his thoughts feel loud and clumsy. He wanted to say something perfect, something that would impress them. The pressure made him feel like he was standing on a stage with bright lights in his eyes. He remembered his earlier answer about humor. He remembered that humor was how humans handled tension. And then the wrong thought came, playful and absurd, like a bubble rising through deep water. Elias' mouth opened before his careful diplomat brain could stop it. "So," he said, and he heard his own voice echo slightly in the great hall, "will you marry me?" The translator repeated the words in Viorlian sound shapes, perfectly faithful, without any hint of joking tone. Elias realized his mistake at the exact same moment he finished speaking. His chest went cold, his face heated. His mind screamed, "Why did you say that?" The hall froze. It was not a dramatic freeze with gasps and shouts. It was worse. It was absolute stillness. Even the soft light seemed to hold its breath. The court members did not move at all, as if the concept of movement had been temporarily removed from reality. Elias' heart hammered. He tried to laugh to show it was a joke, but the sound died in his throat. He tried to speak, to explain, but his tongue stuck to the roof of his mouth. The Empress stared at him. Her expression did not change, but her eyes sharpened. Elias felt like he had just thrown a pebble into a calm lake and watched the entire lake turn to glass. A Viorlian advisor stepped forward, slow and precise. "The human envoy has issued a unity petition," the advisor said. Elias blinked, confused and horrified. "Unity petition?" Another voice, deeper, answered from the other side. "It has been spoken before the throne." "It cannot be unsaid." Elias' stomach dropped. He tried to raise his hands, but he remembered that sudden movement might be seen as disrespect. He forced himself to stand still, even though every part of him wanted to run. Empress Surithka finally spoke. Her voice remained calm, almost gentle, and somehow that made it worse. "You have requested marriage." Elias managed to whisper. "It was a joke." The advisor's head turned sharply toward him. "The translator does not encode joke in a unity petition." The words were direct. Elias swallowed hard. "I didn't mean it as a literal proposal. In human culture, we sometimes say things like that to break tension." The Empress lifted one hand, and the advisor fell silent instantly. The Empress's gaze stayed on Elias, steady and unreadable. "You claim humans speak non-literal words to reduce tension," she said. "Yet you chose a phrase that implies permanent union. Explain the logic of this reduction." Elias' mind spun. He opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. He tried to keep his English simple, because complicated words would only make things worse. "In human thinking," he said carefully, "marriage is a bond. It can be serious, but it can also be used in jokes because it is a very big idea. Saying a big idea in a silly way makes people less afraid." The Empress did not respond at once. The court remained silent, but Elias felt their attention like 1,000 quiet cameras. Then Empress Surithka took one slow step forward. Her robe shifted like falling water. She stopped at the edge of the marked line, close enough that Elias could see fine patterns on her crown. "Your request has been heard," she said. "In our law, a unity petition is not answered with laughter." Elias' throat tightened. "Empress, I'm sorry. I did not intend disrespect." "I do not detect disrespect," she said, and that surprised him. "I detect ignorance." Elias almost laughed again from relief, but he stopped himself in time. The Empress continued, "Ignorance is correctable. Your petition activates a protocol older than our present throne. It cannot be dismissed by intent alone." Elias felt like the floor moved under him. "Protocol?" "Yes," she said. "The question of union, it will be evaluated." Elias' mouth went dry. "Evaluated how?" The Empress's eyes remained on his, and for the first time Elias thought he saw something like curiosity there, quiet but sharp. "You asked," she said. "Therefore you will learn what you asked." The court shifted as one, like a single organism changing position. A soft tone sounded somewhere high above, like a bell made of crystal. Elias' translator hummed as if receiving new data. The advisor spoke again, formal and clear. Human envoy Elias Rowan is designated as cultural anchor. He will remain within the imperial sphere until the petition is resolved. Elias' brain tried to process the words. Remain until resolved. This was not a normal diplomatic meeting anymore. This was something else. Elias forced himself to stand straight. He was terrified, embarrassed, and completely out of his prepared plan. But he was still a representative of humanity. If he showed panic, he might turn a misunderstanding into a disaster. He took a steadying breath and met the Empress's gaze again. "Empress Surithka," he said, voice controlled with effort, "I want peace between our peoples. I don't want harm from my mistake." The Empress's voice was calm, and it carried through the hall like flowing water. "There will be no harm. This court does not answer confusion with violence." Elias felt his shoulders loosen by a fraction. At least safety. The Empress stepped back toward her throne stand and raised her hand again. The advisors bowed slightly. The court remained silent, but the atmosphere changed, like a door closing somewhere. "Envoy Elias Rowan," she said, "your question will receive an answer. It will not be the answer you expect." Elias' heart thudded once heavy. He did not know what that meant, and that uncertainty was worse than any clear threat. The attendants returned to his sides, their movements smooth and unhurried. One of them spoke quietly. "You will come with us." Elias nodded, trying to keep his face neutral. As he turned to follow, he glanced back once at the Empress. She stood perfectly still, watching him leave, as if she had just been handed a new puzzle and found it interesting. Elias walked out of the hall, the light fading behind him, his mind racing with one thought that repeated like a drumbeat. It was only a joke. And somehow it had become history. Elias Rowan did not sleep that night, though the room given to him was softer and quieter than any place he had ever known. The walls glowed with a gentle light that changed color slowly, like a calm ocean at sunset. The bed shaped itself to his body when he lay down, and the air stayed warm and steady. Everything was designed for rest. His mind refused. He stared at the ceiling, watching faint patterns move across it, and replayed the moment in the great hall again and again. The silence. The Empress's eyes, the word protocol. He turned onto his side and pressed his face into the pillow. "It was just a joke," he whispered to himself, like saying it enough times might make it true again. A soft tone sounded in the room. Elias sat up, heart jumping. A gentle voice came from nowhere and everywhere. "Envoy Elias Rowan, your waking patterns indicate distress. Would you accept guidance?" Elias rubbed his face. "Who's talking?" "I am a cultural interface," the voice said. "I exist to assist visitors in understanding the Viorlian Empire." Elias sighed. "Do you help visitors understand how not to accidentally trigger ancient galactic laws?" There was a pause. "That function is limited." Elias let out a short laugh. It came out tired but real. "Figures." He swung his legs over the side of the bed and stood. The floor felt warm under his feet. A wide window curved along one wall, showing a view of the city far below. Lights traced the paths of bridges and towers, glowing like lines on a living map. "Can you tell me what's going to happen?" Elias asked. "The question of union requires cultural evaluation," the interface replied. "You will be observed, you will be engaged, your behaviors will be recorded and analyzed." Elias frowned. "So I'm a test subject." "You are a reference point," the voice corrected. "A cultural anchor." "That doesn't sound much better." The interface did not respond. A soft chime sounded at the door. Elias turned. The door opened, and one of the tall attendants from the hall stood there. Its dark eyes reflected the room's light. "Envoy Rowan," the attendant said, "you will come." Elias grabbed his jacket and followed. The corridors outside were wide and curved, with walls that glowed softly. The building felt less like a palace and more like a living structure that guided people where it wanted them to go. They walked in silence for a long time. Elias tried to count the turns, but he lost track quickly. Finally, they entered a room that felt different. It was open with no clear walls, just fields of light that formed soft borders. In the center stood a long, low table. On one side sat Empress Surithka. She was alone. Elias stopped at the edge of the light field. His heart beat faster again, but not as wildly as before. There was something about this space that felt less formal, less heavy. "You may sit," the Empress said. Elias hesitated for half a second, then moved forward and sat on the opposite side of the table. The surface glowed faintly between them like frozen starlight. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The Empress studied him, not like a ruler judging a subject, but like a scientist observing something new. Elias tried to sit still, but his foot tapped against the floor before he noticed. "You display restless motion," she said. "Sorry," Elias said. "Humans do that when they're nervous or thinking. Your species appears to think often." Elias smiled a little. "We're good at worrying." The Empress tilted her head. "Worry suggests fear of future outcomes." "Yes." "You cannot measure future outcomes with certainty." "No. Yet you worry." "Yes." She was quiet for a long moment. "This behavior is inefficient." "Probably," Elias admitted, "but it's also human." The Empress looked at the glowing table. "The question of union requires understanding how your species forms bonds. You will explain." Elias swallowed. "Explain what exactly?" "Connection, humor, friendship, love, these terms are central to your petition." Elias winced slightly at the word petition. "Okay, I'll try." The table brightened and shapes appeared on its surface, simple and soft. Two small light figures stood apart, then slowly moved closer. "Humans are social," Elias said. "We survive better together than alone, so we build relationships. We talk, we share stories, we help each other. Assistance increases survival probability," the Empress said. "This is logical." "Yes, but it's not only about survival," Elias replied. "We also care about how it feels to be alive. Being with others makes life feel fuller." "Define fuller." Elias thought for a moment. "It means more meaningful, more than just eating, working, and sleeping. It means laughing with someone, remembering moments, knowing someone else is happy because you're there." The Empress watched the light figures on the table. They touched, and the glow between them became brighter. "You derive satisfaction from another's emotional state," she said. "Yeah," Elias said. "That's a good way to put it." "Is this universal among humans?" "Not all the time," Elias admitted. "We make mistakes. We hurt each other, we get angry, but we keep trying. That's part of it too." The Empress looked at him again. "You value effort over perfection." "I guess so," Elias said. "We're not very good at being perfect." The Empress's eyes held something thoughtful. "Our systems are designed to minimize error." "Nothing wrong with that," Elias said, "but sometimes errors lead to new ideas." The Empress did not answer right away. A servant entered quietly and placed two small dishes on the table. One in front of Elias, one in front of the Empress. Elias looked down. The dish held something that looked like clear fruit glowing softly. "Food?" he asked. "Nutrient exchange," she said. "A cultural practice of yours." Elias picked up a piece carefully and tasted it. It was sweet, cool, and refreshing. His eyebrows lifted. "This is really good." The Empress watched him eat. "Your expression indicates pleasure." "Yeah," Elias said, smiling. "It's great, thank you." She picked up a piece herself, studied it, then ate it. Her expression barely changed, but her eyes shifted slightly. "The sensation is interesting," she said. Elias chuckled softly. "Welcome to human dining culture. We like sharing meals. It's another way we connect." "Eating together forms bonds?" "Sometimes," Elias said. "It gives us time to talk, to be relaxed." The Empress considered this. "Our meals are optimized for efficiency." "Humans are not very efficient," Elias said. "We're very good at wasting time in nice ways." "Define nice." "Enjoyable," Elias said. "Comforting." The Empress set down the dish. "Your species invests resources in non-essential comfort." "Yes," Elias said, "because it makes life feel better." The Empress leaned back slightly. "This concept appears repeatedly." "Feeling better?" Elias asked. "Yes." "You prioritize internal experience over external output." Elias thought about that. "I guess we try to balance both." The room grew quiet again, but it was a softer quiet now, not heavy like the Great Hall. The Empress spoke. "Your petition suggests a bond between our peoples." "Explain how humans form long-term bonds." Elias took a breath. "We start small, we meet, we talk, we learn about each other, we find things in common. Sometimes we disagree, sometimes we argue, but if we care, we try to understand. And if understanding fails, then we try again," Elias said, "or we walk away. Not every connection lasts." The Empress's eyes narrowed slightly. "Your bonds are temporary." "Some are," Elias said. "Some last a lifetime, some last only a moment but still matter." Value is assigned to moments that do not persist. Yes, Elias said, because they still change us. The Empress was silent for a long time. Elias shifted in his seat. Can I ask something? You are under evaluation, she said, but you may ask. Why didn't you just cancel the protocol? Elias asked. I told you it was a joke. Your intent was recorded, she said, but your action revealed a cultural pattern. You used a concept of deep union as a tool to reduce fear. This is unusual. Unusual bad or unusual interesting? Elias asked carefully. The Empress paused. Unusual informative. Elias smiled a little at that. The Empress stood. Elias stood too, copying her without thinking. You will accompany me, she said. They walked through a different corridor, one that opened into a wide outdoor space. The sky above was a deep blue, dotted with stars even though it felt like daytime. Floating platforms drifted slowly in the air, carrying people and light. Below, the city spread out in quiet order. Elias stopped for a moment just to look. It's beautiful, he said. Beauty is a repeated term, the Empress said. It means it makes me feel something good, Elias explained. Like wonder. Wonder, she repeated. Define. Feeling small in a good way, Elias said. Like the universe is big and you get to be part of it. The Empress looked out at the city. Our records define the universe as a system to be understood. Humans like to feel it, Elias said. They walked along a path lined with glowing plants. Their light pulsed slowly like breathing. Why did you become an envoy? The Empress asked. Elias blinked. That's not part of the evaluation, is it? It is now, Elias thought. I like meeting people. I like learning how others live. I like finding ways to help different groups get along. You seek connection, she said. I guess I do, Elias admitted. And you express this through words that create risk, she said. Elias laughed softly. Yeah. That part still gets me in trouble. They stopped near a low railing that looked out over a wide open space where children of the Violin species were moving in careful patterns, guided by taller figures. Your young are trained in order, Elias said. Yes, the Empress said. From an early stage. Human kids are messier, Elias said. They play, they make noise, they ask a lot of questions. Questions increase uncertainty, she said. Yeah, Elias said, but they also increase understanding. The Empress watched the children for a long time. Your species accepts uncertainty as a condition of existence, she said. We don't really have a choice, Elias said, so we try to make it less scary. Through humor, connection, shared meals, stories, she said. Elias smiled. You're getting it. The Empress looked at him. You believe these methods could apply between civilizations? I do, Elias said. I think if we see each other as people instead of problems, things go better. The Empress turned back to the city. Our empire has expanded through clarity and control. And it's impressive, Elias said, but maybe there's room for something else too. What else? Understanding that doesn't come from plans, Elias said. It comes from knowing each other. The Empress was quiet. A soft tone sounded again like the one in the Great Hall. The evaluation continues, she said. You will remain. Elias nodded. I figured. She looked at him, and for the first time, Elias thought he saw the smallest hint of something like a smile, not on her mouth, but in her eyes. You are different from our expectations, she said. Elias rubbed the back of his neck. Humans get that a lot. As they walked back inside, Elias felt something new. He was still nervous, still unsure, still very aware that he had started something far bigger than himself. But beneath all that, there was also a strange sense of hope. Maybe this mistake, this terrible, embarrassing joke, was opening a door instead of closing one. And maybe, somehow, he was exactly where he needed to be. Elias Rowan woke to the sound of soft wind moving through something like leaves, even though he was inside the imperial sphere. The room's walls had shifted again, forming open shapes that let light and air pass through. He sat up slowly, still not used to how the palace seemed to change its shape around him, like it was alive and paying attention. A quiet tone sounded. The cultural interface spoke. Envoy Elias Rowan, the trial of two worlds will begin. Elias blinked. That sounds serious. It is symbolic, the voice replied. Symbolic processes often carry deep meaning in both Violin and human cultures. Elias rubbed his eyes and stood. Do I need to wear something special? Comfort is recommended, the interface said. A section of the wall opened, revealing a simple set of clothes, soft fabric, light and flexible. Elias changed and took a deep breath. Moments later, the door opened. The same attendant stood there, calm and silent. You will follow, the attendant said. Elias nodded and stepped out. They walked through long halls that slowly became brighter. The air changed too, feeling fresher like outside air after rain. The path opened into a wide space under a transparent dome. Above them, the sky stretched out, deep and endless, stars visible even in the soft light of the day. In the center of the space stood Empress Surithka. She was not wearing her crown. Her robe was simpler, less layered, like she had stepped out of her role as ruler and into something else. "You are prepared?" she asked. "As much as I can be," Elias said. "The trial of two worlds is not a test of skill," she said. "It is a test of perspective." Elias nodded. "I can try my best." She gestured toward a long path made of pale stone that stretched forward and disappeared into a mist-like light. "We will walk," she said, "and we will observe." They stepped onto the path together. As they moved forward, the space around them changed. The dome faded and the world opened into a wide field of glowing sand. The ground felt solid under Elias' feet, but the horizon shimmered like a dream. "What is this place?" Elias asked. "A memory field," the Empress said. "It reflects recorded histories." The sand began to shift, forming images. Shapes rose from the ground, soft and light-based, like sculptures made of fog and stars. Elias recognized the shapes of human cities, old ones, ancient ones. He saw stone buildings, simple tools, fires burning in the dark. "That's Earth," he whispered. "Yes," the Empress said. "Your early development." Elias walked slowly, watching the scenes change. He saw people huddled together in small groups, sharing food, pointing at the sky, telling stories around firelight. "We didn't have much back then," Elias said, "but we had each other." "You formed groups for survival," the Empress said. "Yes," Elias said, "but also for comfort." The scene shifted. The stone buildings became towers. The firelight became electric light. People filled wide streets, busy and loud. "So many," the Empress said. "Your population expanded rapidly." "We made a lot of mistakes along the way," Elias said. "Wars, arguments, unfair systems." "Conflict appears often in your records," she said. "It does," Elias agreed. "But so does cooperation. We also built hospitals, schools, places to help each other." The sand shifted again. This time the scene showed humans reaching for the stars, building ships, standing on alien worlds. Elias felt his chest tighten. "That's when we started leaving home." "You sought the unknown," the Empress said. "We were curious," Elias said, "and hopeful." The scene faded and the field became quiet again. The Empress turned to him. "Your history is marked by emotional response to uncertainty." Elias nodded. "We get scared, we get excited, sometimes both at once." She gestured forward. They continued walking. The world shifted again, this time forming tall, smooth structures of light. Elias realized he was seeing the early Viorlian Empire. The shapes were clean and precise, lines perfect and measured. "Your beginnings," Elias said. "Yes," the Empress replied. The scene showed Viorlians working in perfect coordination, building cities that fit together like pieces of a puzzle. "You don't waste space," Elias said. "We do not waste effort," she replied. The scene moved forward in time. The empire grew, spreading across stars, connecting worlds with shining paths of light. "You expanded fast too," Elias said. "With planning," she said. "With control." Elias watched as the Viorlian figures moved with calm purpose. There were no scenes of chaos, no visible struggle. "Do you ever get tired of being perfect?" Elias asked softly. The Empress paused. "We do not define our state as perfect, we define it as optimal." Elias smiled slightly. "Humans would call that perfect." They walked again, and the memory field faded into something new. Now they stood in a wide, open space with no images, just a soft, glowing floor and a sky that slowly changed colors. "This is the space between histories," the Empress said. "Here nothing is shown, only what is created." Elias looked around. "So what happens now? You will solve a problem," she said. "Together." A shape appeared between them. A glowing structure, tall and complex, like a broken bridge suspended in air. Pieces floated apart, not connected. "This represents a connection that has failed," the Empress said. "Your task is to restore it." Elias studied the floating parts. There were no tools. "No instructions. How do we move them?" he asked. "You will decide," she said. Elias stepped closer. He reached out and the pieces reacted to his hands, shifting slightly like magnets. "Oh," he said, "they respond to touch." The Empress raised her hand as well. The pieces moved between them, drifting back and forth. They worked in silence at first, trying to align the shapes. Elias moved one piece into place, and the Empress adjusted another. Sometimes they moved the same piece at once and had to pull back. "Sorry," Elias said once when their hands brushed. "This is acceptable," she said. They continued. After a while, Elias noticed something. "They don't just fit one way," he said. "There are multiple ways to connect them." "Yes," the Empress said. "There are many stable configurations." "So which one is right?" Elias asked. She looked at the structure. "Define right," Elias thought. "The one that works best for both sides." The Empress considered that. They kept building. Slowly, the bridge-like shape began to take form. It was not perfectly symmetrical, but it held together. "It's a little uneven," Elias said. "It is stable," the Empress replied. "Sometimes that's enough," Elias said. When the last piece clicked into place, the structure glowed brightly, then dissolved into light. The sky above them shifted color again, warmer now. "You solved the problem," the Empress said. "We solved it," Elias corrected. She looked at him. "You share credit." "Yeah," Elias said. "That's another human thing." They began walking again. The path led them to a quiet place that looked like a garden made of light. Soft shapes like trees glowed gently. There were no sharp edges, only curves. They sat on a low, glowing bench. The Empress spoke. "You have shown that your species values shared experience." Elias nodded. "We do things together because it feels better than doing them alone." "And if doing them together is slower?" she asked. "Sometimes," Elias said, "but we still choose it." The Empress looked at the glowing garden. "Our systems favor speed and certainty." "Those are good things," Elias said, "but so is understanding." "Understanding can be inefficient," she said. "Yes," Elias said, "but it lasts." The Empress was quiet for a long time. "Your petition," she said finally, "has moved beyond its original meaning." Elias smiled nervously. "I figured that might happen." "You did not intend to request a union of civilizations," she said. "No," Elias said. "I was just trying to make things less awkward." "And yet," she said, "you revealed a path your species walks naturally." Elias looked at her. "What path is that?" She met his eyes. "The path of connection through vulnerability. You expose your uncertainty instead of hiding it." Elias shrugged slightly. "We're not very good at hiding it." "This may be strength," she said. Elias' eyebrows lifted. "That's not something I hear every day." The Empress stood. Elias stood too. "The trial of two worlds is not complete," she said, "but its direction is set." "What does that mean for me?" Elias asked. "It means you will remain," she said, "not as a subject, as a participant." Elias took a breath. "I can do that." They walked back toward the light path that led out of the memory field. As they moved, Elias felt something shift inside him. The fear was still there, but it was softer now. In its place was a strange feeling of trust. Before they reached the end, the Empress stopped. "Envoy Elias Rowan," she said. "Yes. Do you regret your joke?" Elias thought for a moment. He remembered the panic, the embarrassment, the cold fear in his chest. "Yes," he said, "and no." "Explain," she said. "I regret how careless it was," Elias said, "but I don't regret that it brought us here." The Empress studied him. "Your species finds value in unintended outcomes," she said. "We call it learning," Elias said. She turned and continued walking. As they stepped back into the palace, the walls forming around them again, Elias realized something important. This was no longer just about a mistake. It was about two worlds trying, slowly and carefully, to understand each other. And for the first time since he had spoken those terrible, strange words in the Great Hall, Elias felt like maybe, just maybe, the answer waiting at the end of this path would be something better than he ever expected. The Great Hall of the Viorlian Empire looked different too. Elias Rowan now. The light still fell from the crystal ceiling in soft waves, and the pillars still rose like frozen motion, but the space no longer felt like a place of judgment. It felt like a place of listening. Elias stood at the marked line again, just as he had on the first day. But this time his hands were steady. Around him the court had gathered in wide arcs, their robes forming a quiet pattern of color and light. At the far end of the hall, Empress Surithka stood at the throne stand, her posture calm and balanced. Her crown rested on her head once more, thin and bright, catching the glow of the ceiling. A soft tone rang through the hall. The cultural interface spoke, its voice clear and neutral. "The trial of two worlds has reached its conclusion. The question of union will now be answered." Elias took a slow breath. His chest felt tight, but not with fear. It felt full, like something important was about to happen, even if he did not know what shape it would take. The Empress stepped forward. "Envoy Elias Rowan," she said. You spoke a question that carried more meaning than you intended. You revealed a path of your species. This court has observed. This empire has considered. The hall was silent. Elias could hear his own breathing. You do not seek dominance, she continued. You do not seek control. You seek understanding even when it is uncertain. You accept imperfection and call it connection. Elias swallowed. He did not know what to say, so he said nothing. The Empress raised her hand, and the light in the hall shifted slightly, warmer now, softer. In our tradition, she said, a marriage is not the joining of two rulers. It is the agreement of two systems to grow together. Elias' heart beat once heavy. I will not bind myself to you as an individual, she said. That is not the answer your species truly needs. Elias felt a strange mix of relief and disappointment, even though he had never actually expected anything else. But, the Empress continued, I accept the bond your question revealed. A quiet ripple passed through the court. The Virelian Empire will open itself to cultural exchange with the Terran Union, she said. Not as a transaction, as a relationship. Elias' breath caught. We will share knowledge, she said. We will share presence. We will allow emotional understanding to exist alongside logic. The cultural interface spoke again. This declaration establishes a path of connection. It is without precedent. The court shifted, not in alarm, but in something like curiosity. The Empress looked directly at Elias. This is my answer. Elias stood very still. His mind struggled to catch up with what he was hearing. Empress, he said finally, his voice quiet but steady, on behalf of humanity, thank you. The Empress inclined her head slightly. Gratitude is acknowledged. A soft, clear sound filled the hall like distant chimes. The light brightened, and the atmosphere changed, not in a dramatic way, but in a gentle one, like the moment after a storm passes and the air feels new. The court members began to move slowly and calmly. Conversations started in low, careful tones. The attendants stepped to Elias' side, but this time their posture was different, less formal, more open. You will come, one of them said, but the words felt like an invitation instead of an order. Elias followed them out of the hall and into a wide open space that overlooked the city. The sky above was deep blue, filled with stars that seemed close enough to touch. The Empress joined him at the railing. For a moment they stood in silence, looking out over the glowing paths and towers below. You have changed our direction, she said. Elias shook his head slightly. I don't think I did. I think I just showed you what we're like. That was sufficient, she said. Elias smiled. Humans would call that a win. The Empress looked at him. Your species uses competition as a measure of success. Sometimes, Elias said, but this doesn't feel like competition. It feels like meeting someone halfway. She considered that. Halfway implies shared movement. Exactly, Elias said. The Empress turned back to the city. We will begin with small steps, shared envoys, shared learning spaces, observation without control. That's more than we hoped for, Elias said honestly. Hope is another emotional concept you value, she said. Yeah, Elias said. We run on it. They walked along the glowing path together. As they moved, Elias noticed something new. Virelians in the open spaces were watching him, but not with cold study. Some tilted their heads, some paused in their work. There was curiosity there and something else he could not quite name. A group of young Virelians stood near a pool of light, arranging floating shapes into patterns. One of them looked at Elias and hesitated, then moved one shape toward him. Elias stopped. He crouched slightly and reached out. The shape drifted into his hand, warm and glowing. He smiled and placed it back into the pattern, but in a different spot. The young Virelians watched. The pattern changed. It was no longer perfectly symmetrical, but it was brighter. The Empress observed this quietly. Your presence alters systems, she said. Elias shrugged. We have a habit of doing that. They continued walking. Later, Elias stood alone on a balcony, looking up at the stars. A small device in his hand glowed softly. It was a communicator, finally allowed to send a message back to Earth. He hesitated, then spoke. This is Envoy Elias Rowan, he said. I'm safe. The mission went differently than planned, but I think it worked. He paused, choosing his words carefully. We didn't sign a treaty, we started a conversation. He closed the device and looked back at the city. Behind him, a soft voice spoke. You measure success in beginnings, not conclusions. Elias turned. The Empress stood there again. Yeah, Elias said. Because beginnings mean there's more to come. She walked to the railing beside him. Our empire has long believed that control ensures stability, she said. You have shown another method. Trust, Elias offered. She nodded slightly. Trust. They stood together watching the stars. Do you ever miss not knowing? Elias asked. Explain, she said. Before you understand something, there's a moment where it could be anything, he said. That moment can be scary, but it can also be exciting. The Empress considered this. We usually remove that moment as quickly as possible. Humans sometimes live in it, Elias said. We write stories about it, we imagine. Imagination creates unreal scenarios, she said. Yeah, Elias said. But sometimes those unreal scenarios become real later. The Empress looked at the stars again. Your species plans through dreams. Something like that, Elias said. The days that followed felt different from the first ones. Elias was no longer guided only by attendance. He was invited to spaces, learning halls, shared gardens, observation platforms where Virelian scholars and human data streams met. He told stories about Earth, about oceans and forests and crowded cities, about music and art and celebrations. In return, he learned about the Virelian view of the universe, how they mapped stars like a language, how they saw patterns where humans saw chaos. Sometimes they agreed, sometimes they did not, but they always talked. One evening, Elias found himself back in the quiet room where he had first spoken privately with the Empress. The glowing table stood between them again. You will leave soon, she said. Yeah, Elias said. I guess I will. The path of connection will continue without you, she said. Elias smiled softly. I hope so. You were a catalyst, she said. I was a nervous guy who made a bad joke, Elias replied. The Empress's eyes held something warm. Those are not mutually exclusive, Elias laughed. He stood and extended his hand, unsure if the gesture would be understood. The Empress looked at it for a moment, then placed her hand in his. Their hands did not match in shape or temperature, but the contact felt steady and real. This, Elias said, is how humans say goodbye sometimes. The Empress held the gesture for a second longer, then released it. It is meaningful, she said. On the day Elias left, the shuttle rose into the sky and the city of light grew smaller beneath him. He looked down through the window, thinking about everything that had changed because of one careless human moment. A joke, a question, a connection. As the stars stretched out before him, Elias smiled. Humanity had not conquered a new world, it had made a new friend. And somewhere in the vast, quiet space between galaxies, that felt like the most powerful answer of all,